Pokemon Legends Arceus, a game that had a tremendous amount of burden on its shoulders during its marketing and release cycle. The number of excited and passionate fans of the Pokemon name has dwindled in recent years, after the release of many ho-hum entries, such as Sword and Shield, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and of course, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. These titles continued to provide the fun sense of adventure that the series has always been known for, but the stagnation of the franchise was starting to become undeniable. It wasn't just us growing older with that childlike nostalgia starting to fade. No, Pokemon had core issues that were never addressed, good features that were left behind, excluded creatures on a game-by-game basis, and perhaps most painful, a series that seemed unwilling to evolve or change. Pokemon is the highest grossing entertainment franchise of all time, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? Cash cows of this magnitude are a rare commodity, so why risk purging it all by switching things up? Despite this corporate incentive to remain steadfast in their approach to game design, our cries for something new, along with the need for creative expression at Gamefreak, eventually persevered. Pokemon Legends Arceus was dreamt of, conceptualized, built, and released with the promise of finally delivering us a new iteration on the Pokemon formula. The marketing presented it as Pokemon meets Breath of the Wild, and our minds ran rampant with speculation on what this could mean. Could this be the title to finally shepherd in a new era of Pokemon? Release day finally arrived, and within the first week, 6.5 million copies of Legends Arceus were purchased, outperforming Sword and Shield on this basis by 500,000 copies. The fanbase rewarded Gamefreak with their wallets for embracing change, but now it's time to evaluate the nature of that change and see if Legends Arceus is truly the new tone setter the franchise desperately needs, or just another offshoot of the franchise to be forgotten within a few years. So with that, I welcome you to my review of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Change. It's what many fans of the Pokemon series have been clamoring about for the last few years. We got a small taste of that with Sun and Moon, but a more dramatic overhaul felt necessary, and that's what we find here. Now, I'm going to break down each category of the gameplay in further detail, but I felt it was first best to provide an overview assessment of the gameplay, considering it's so different than what's come before. Legends Arceus finds inspiration from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but it doesn't borrow from it too heavily, as it instead finds ways to maintain the core pillars of the Pokemon franchise while also presenting them in refreshing ways. Instead of traveling linearly through a set world, players navigate 5 different biomes as they complete quests, finish side missions, catch new Pokemon, collect data, and explore the vastness of the Hisui region. The combat maintains its turn-based roots while also pacing encounters much better with an action-oriented approach. You won't have to sit through countless text, NPC animations, battle menus, and more just to complete a battle. All the fluff has been trimmed away while the good elements have been maintained, resulting in faster versions of the fun battles we already know and love. This rapid pacing allows the moment-to-moment gameplay to be far better than in any Pokemon game that's come before. A lot less downtime leads to higher player engagement, which is this title's greatest strength by far. Exploration is another big factor that emphasizes this point. It's disappointing that Hisui isn't one vast open world, but instead a series of smaller ones. However, it's still rewarding to explore these biomes as you find new Pokemon, items, and requests to complete. The game compels you to explore every inch of these maps, not only to complete game objectives, but also intrinsically by looking for recognizable landmarks from your most recent Sinnoh adventure. A typical play session will see you picking up a mission in Jubilife Village before setting out on a quest to quell a frenzied Pokemon. As you make your way to the objective, you'll be distracted often with new crafting materials, new Pokemon, new battles, and more in the most wonderful way. Once you reach your destination, a story section plays out with an accompanying boss fight before you do the whole thing over again in another biome. It's pretty well done, and it's a complete switch up for the series. And the reason I mention this structure up front is because this is what will make or break your experience with Legends Arceus. Let that be clear to you now. This exciting new format is what makes this title so enticing to fans of the series. The fun factor alone from this setup is through the roof, and if you're a fan, you're gonna love it. But if you aren't into the structure I've outlined here, then you most likely won't enjoy this game, because as we will see, it isn't uplifted by storytelling or presentation. With that, we can now break down each part of the gameplay in further detail. Legends Arceus promotes a lot of player freedom, more than most Pokemon games anyway, but like most open world games, gameplay here is paced by two factors: quests that guide the player's experience, and player-driven exploration. So let's start by looking at the former. Quests can be broken down into two categories: main story missions and side missions called requests. The main missions obviously push the narrative along, but their structure gets very repetitive during the middle portions of this game. After completing the set of tutorial missions, and there are quite a few, you'll be sent to 5 different biomes to stop Berserk Pokemon from wreaking havoc. Once you arrive, you'll meet with an NPC to unlock a new ride Pokemon. This includes many new Pokemon and new regional variants that give you the ability to move faster, climb rough terrain, traverse water, fly, and locate hidden objects in the ground. These ride Pokemon allow for further exploration of Hisui. Once you've got your new Pokemon Whip, you'll pull up to the arena of the Frenzied Noble. In the story, these are some of Hisui's most powerful Pokemon, and they act as guardians of the region that they oversee. However, they've gotten into a panic state where they're capable of hurting people and causing a lot of damage. To stop the rampage, you'll have to complete a boss encounter, which are all structured identically. You'll be locked into the arena with the behemoth and will have to dodge incoming attacks to stay in the fight. That's right, your trainer can take damage in this game, and if you absorb too much, you'll faint. It's a cool mechanic that really emphasizes the untamed wilderness theme that the Hisui region promotes. Anyway, back to the fight. While you're dodging attacks, you'll have to throw calming bombs at the Pokemon. Hit it enough times, and a standard battle will begin where your Pokemon duke it out against the beast. If you manage to deplete its HP, the Noble will be opened up to additional damage from your bombs for a set period of time. Once its frenzy meter is depleted, you win the fight. It's not bad by any stretch, but after doing this 5 or 6 times, it does start to feel stale. After you complete this same loop in 5 different regions, you'll get a new series of quests, which I won't discuss heavily to avoid spoilers. Regardless though, the structure of these main quests are too similar throughout the game, leaving the game's external motivation to progress feeling quite weak. The predictability of it takes away from the excitement, and without enough variation within each boss encounter, the whole system ends up feeling kind of copy and paste by the end. On the other hand, we have requests that serve as the game's side missions. Do they fare much better? Well, unfortunately no. Many of the game's side quests are not story-driven missions to be completed alongside of interesting NPCs or new Pokemon. Instead, they usually boil down to showing someone a completed Pokédex entry, gifting someone a Pokemon, finding an NPC, bringing materials to someone, or crafting an item as a gift. These requests feel like bait to get you to explore Hisui more and work towards completing your goal of finishing the Pokédex. However, the game's mechanics and systems are motivational enough to keep you playing, battling, and exploring. These requests then feel restrictive, as you're asked to complete tasks relating to exploration, but not those of your own accord. In other words, I want to explore Hisui on my own and by my own wishes. I don't want to be sent out to catch and battle Bidoof 11 times just to show someone a completed entry for a rat. These requests are a missed opportunity to flesh out the culture and people of Jubilife Village. Remember those escort sections in Diamond and Pearl? Those would have fit perfectly here, as venturing out into the wild with a friend while experiencing a set little story would have enhanced the experience dramatically. Make side quests something special and leave exploration up to the player to uncover for themselves. Instead, requests fall flat on their face. They're just another checklist to complete. Don't get me wrong, checklists can be fun, but more so when the player is the one in charge of making the list. Overall, quests are here to pace the experience and keep the story progression moving forward, but they aren't varied enough to maintain peak player interest. These quests simply can't compete with the fun factor provided by player-driven exploration, which is much more engrossing. The moment-to-moment gameplay in Legends Arceus is the title's greatest strength, and that's mostly due to its 4 pillars of gameplay: exploration, crafting, catching, and battling. Outside of Jubilife Village, you'll have 5 different biomes to explore: a grasslands with a dense forest, a mountainside with snowy peaks, a coastland with tons of water and a volcano, a swampland filled with ruins, and an icy mountainside full of sheer cliffs and snow. None of these biomes are connected, but they are a decent size, and they're full of hidden nooks and crannies. Many of these off-the-beaten-path locations are inaccessible until you unlock Ride Pokemon, which means returning to older maps with new abilities is a ton of fun. There's also a day and night cycle that sees new Pokemon spawning depending on the time of day. And these factors help keep exploration enjoyable mechanically, even though the presentation of the game leaves a lot to be desired. Obviously, catching and battling Pokemon is the primary thing you do while out exploring, but there's also plenty of materials for you to gather for crafting purposes. Plants, minerals, and man-made objects can be gathered throughout the world and pieced together on the go using a crafting kit. This allows you to make things like potions, Pokeballs, lures, revives, and more as you see fit. Since these items are so useful, you'll constantly find yourself stopping to nab resources while out in the open world, which helps fuel that moment-to-moment gameplay that the game does so well. If you aren't a big fan of crafting, you can also buy many items within Jubilife Village to circumvent it. My only complaint with the crafting is that many of the items I picked up didn't have a corresponding recipe, and I wasn't sure what to do with them. As a result, they jammed up my satchel space, which was super frustrating. Instead of immediately getting good items like rare candies and EXP levelers, they went to my storage because my backpack was full of useless crap. I'm sure there's more to the crafting system as you level up your survey core rank, but through a casual playthrough, a lot of these items appear valueless. That brings us to catching Pokemon. One of the greatest choices Legends Arceus made with its design was not requiring the player to enter battle with a Pokemon to catch it. If you have a Pokeball at the ready, you can whip it at any unsuspecting Pokemon for a chance to capture it. Most Pokemon are caught pretty easily, but some are aggressive and will deflect Pokeballs after they detect you. In this instance, you'll have to battle them for a chance to catch them. On the other hand, some Pokemon are shy and will flee from you if noticed, such as Abra, who teleports away. It gives each Pokemon a little bit more personality, which is a nice touch, but it also ensures that you must approach carefully for certain Pokemon to be caught. To accomplish this, you can lurk in tall grass and lure Pokemon to you using berries as bait. And if you do things just right, you may manage to hit an unsuspecting Pokemon on its backside, which will increase your likelihood of capturing it. It's a nice little reward for careful planning. Hopefully from this alone, though, you can see that a lot of thought has gone into your potential for capturing Pokemon. You can of course still capture Pokemon after battling them, but just being able to navigate the world catching Pokemon with little interruption proves to be a powerful design choice. It's just fun to lob Pokeballs, and doing so provides a lot of rewards. Not only do you get access to a potential new team member, but you also further your efforts to complete the Pokédex while earning currency to be used back at the village for items and customization. And speaking of team members, I love how fluid the feel of team building is in Legends Arceus. It's super easy to switch out Pokemon from your party and get them leveled up quickly. I never felt the need to lock any one Pokemon into my party or to pre-plan what I wanted to use. If something new came along and I liked it, I found a spot for it in my roster until a new desired critter came to take its place. It's a really nice way of encouraging experimentation, and I loved it. These systems were so well realized that it made me want to complete the Pokédex for the first time since Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire 8 years ago. To be transparent, I didn't because of my limited time, but I can for sure see someone with more time losing themselves in this game for 100 hours or more. Anyway, to be more detailed, finishing the Pokédex in Legends Arceus means not only catching every Pokemon, but also leveling up their entries to gain full completion. To reach this full completion, you must complete research tasks for each Pokemon until they reach rank 10, at which their entry becomes permanent in the Pokédex. These tasks involve things like catching the Pokemon, battling it, seeing it use certain moves, feeding it, and much more. There's enough options within each entry that you won't run out of ways to level up any given Pokemon's ranking. Essentially, every interaction you have with a Pokemon, whether it be in the wild, or another trainer's, or your own, will level up its ranking, which is satisfying. Many components of this game feel rewarding in this way, which is why the gameplay is as big a success as it is. That brings us to the battle system of Legends Arceus, and while most of what we know has been maintained, many new elements have been included to shake things up. You of course can carry a team of 6 with you and battle any wild Pokemon you encounter for a chance to defeat it or catch it to gain XP. The type system is maintained and super effective moves are once again king. That being said, I noticed that wild Pokemon pack a much harder punch than ever before. There are normal wild Pokemon in this game that can wreck your team, especially if they have 1 or 2 other Pokemon aiding them in battle. It feels a little ridiculous when this happens. I mean, I know we want challenge in our Pokemon games, but not like this. Luckily, this doesn't happen often, and most Pokemon are still relatively easy to defeat, while the catch rate has also gone up drastically, leading to less frustration and stagnation. A new stance system has also been included in Legends Arceus, and it manages to add a small bit of tactical decision making to battling. Once a Pokemon has mastered a move through leveling up, or by using an item on it, it will be able to use that move in either agile or strong stances. Agile stances decrease the attack's power but increase your speed, usually resulting in you being able to attack twice in a row. On the other hand, strong stances add damage, but the energy spent usually results in your opponent getting 2 actions in before you can go again. At the same time, your opponents also have access to these agile and strong stances, leading to a bit of strategy within the battle system. In trainer battles, you can use an agile move followed by a strong move to dish out a ton of damage, or you can use weaker moves against wild Pokemon to whittle down their health for a better chance to catch it. It's nothing crazy, but certainly more than usual for Pokemon games. Overall, it was a decent inclusion. Out in the wild, you may also encounter Alpha Pokemon. These are souped up mons with great stats and moves that aren't usually native to them. These make for tough battles, but since they end up being 6-on-1 encounters most of the time, you can defeat them or catch them with a bit of perseverance. They do make for great XP boosters, but more importantly, some species of Pokemon are only found during these encounters, meaning if you want to complete the Pokédex, you'll have to take on the challenge. Another good inclusion, no doubt. And finally, there's trainer battles, which function similarly to how they do in the main series, with one stipulation. These battles utilize the set mode, meaning you won't be given the option to switch in Pokemon between your opponent's mons fainting. This small change eliminates your ability to hard switch into easy matchups to sweep your opponent's team. Meanwhile, stats seem to not be one for one when compared to the mainline games, and this, paired up with the set mode of battling, leads to more difficult trainer battles. Certainly nothing too challenging, but a nice change of pace nonetheless. Weirdly enough though, your Pokemon only gain experience after you defeat all the opponent's Pokemon, meaning if any of your Pokemon are blacked out at the end of the battle, they get 0 experience. And this was a bad choice, as it feels like half your team gets robbed of experience as a result. Regardless, these new inclusions, along with your ability to move freely around the battlefield, creates a refreshing battle system with much better flow and pacing than any we've seen before. I'd love for the Generation 9 games to utilize this approach to battling, especially since Pokemon abilities would most likely return after being absent here. That would make for a fascinating shake-up to the main series games, but I doubt we will get that. Still, this battle system, along with the exploration, crafting, and catching mechanics, makes for a free-flowing and fun set of systems that will keep you playing despite the game's major blemishes and stumbles. Alright, before we talk about the crappy presentation and story, I gotta fanboy a bit and share my thoughts on some of the new Pokemon and regional variants. This part is obviously very subjective, so feel free to skip it, but let's be real, the new Pokemon are always each game's biggest allure, and I know you have your own opinions to compare to mine, so be sure to let me know your favorites in the comments below. 7 new Pokemon have been introduced in this game, most of which are new evolutions to existing Pokemon. If I had to rank them from best to worst, based solely on my own preferences, I'd say Wordeer, Overquill, Cleaver, Basculegion, Enamorus, Sneasler, and Ursaluna. Stantler is one of my favorite Pokemon. I don't know why, I just love the way it looks, and I love that it finally got an evolution. It just looks so majestic, and adding powerful stab psychic moves to its arsenal made it a fun team member to use. Overquill is another new evolution most people won't see coming. It's an excellent name, and having a pufferfish blow up its spikes just seems so natural, and I love the purple and black color palette that really accentuates its dark and poison typing. Cleaver is just cool. Its massive arms look sick, and making it a rock type just feels like a nice complement to Scizzor's steel typing. And since it's the first noble Pokemon you'll fight, it feels memorable instead of stale like some of the others. Basculegion is kind of cool. It looks a little bit too much like Basculin for my taste though. Its additional ghost typing seems pretty random. Enamorus is kind of just here. I don't have any real reactions to it. It's another counterpart for Tornadus, Thundurus, and Landorus, and that's about it to me. Sneasler, it kind of belongs in the Uncanny Valley. Tall Weavile just doesn't work for me. Its poison fighting type combo also seems too different than its usual ice and dark typings. It just doesn't work for me. And then there's Ursaluna, who misses the mark for me completely. I don't like the design, I don't like the typing, they just try too hard with its design, and it feels disjointed. Next up are the regional variants, and I'm not going to be going over all of them since there's a lot more, but my top 3 would be Arcanine, Zoroark, and Lilligant. Arcanine especially looks badass, with the darker colors taking over his usual white mane. Conversely, my bottom 3 are Avalugg, Sliggoo, and Goodra. The last 2 I just don't get. What were they going for? The steel typing is fine, but the shell it goes into isn't designed with enough detail to catch the eye. It's bad. I look at it and I think, what the hell is that? I hate it. Alright, that's enough fanboying over the new Pokemon. Let's get back to the review. Okay, I've avoided this topic for the entire video now, but as you can tell by the title, Legends Arceus is kind of an ugly game, and it has severe issues with its presentation. To be upfront, a lot of people are going to be willing to overlook this, considering how fun the game's core loop is, and that perspective is fine for any individual to have. However, this is a review, and I simply cannot give this game a free pass just because it's so fun. Especially considering that once again, Pokemon is that highest grossing entertainment franchise on the planet. More money has gone into this franchise than any other, and delivering a game that's this unpolished and lacking feels like yet another slap in the face. EA gets so much grief about recycling Madden and FIFA every year given how much money they make off of them. But Gamefreak has managed to avoid this level of criticism despite how many of their titles release without the obvious improvements we'd expect. And that isn't a one-to-one comparison. I know that EA is a lot more deserving of the grief than Gamefreak, and I also know that Gamefreak obviously doesn't get all the money from Pokemon. But still, it feels like they're a bit lazy sometimes. Obviously, each Pokemon game isn't a carbon copy of the previous, but for a franchise to have so much money around it, only to churn out games that look like this, it just isn't acceptable to me any longer. I understand that an open world endeavor is new for the development team and this franchise, but I can't in good conscience overlook the state of this game's presentation without lambasting it for some of the issues. Now, to be fair, most of the game's issues are relating to its graphics, not really its technical side. But still, this has got to be one of the ugliest AAA games I've played recently. Most natural environmental objects like cliffsides contain very little detail that might convey a sense of geographical realism. Water especially looks terrible in this game, and long stretches of surfing genuinely made me dizzy with how it moves in comparison to your character. These factors aren't aided by good texture work either, resulting in everything looking very plain but also very muddy at times. A very limited color palette also results in landscapes looking barren with very few landmarks to serve as indicators for where you're at on the map. A compromise should have been made here to make the worlds feel a tad more genuine. Instead, everything feels quite shallow, as if the game lacked a huge budget. A more stylistic approach was needed. Another issue in the environments would be the ungodly amount of pop-in that occurs. Objects big and small will pop into existence throughout this game. The one that annoys me the most, of course, being the Pokemon themselves that function similarly to how they did in the wild area of Sword and Shield. They aren't there 1 minute, and then boom, there they are. They just pop in out of nowhere. It looks terrible and is evidence of this game's very poor draw distance. Another example of this would be some Pokemon that are within range to appear, but are far enough away that their animations don't play out at the standard 30 FPS, leading to a very unappealing look. Also, I'm not sure if it's showing up in the footage or not, but there's this weird white outline effect that's visible numerous times throughout a playthrough. This happens a lot when you're out on the water. Take a look at this battle, see for yourself. I mean, first of all, they don't give land Pokemon a reasonable platform to stand on in the water, it's just a weird, awkward floating Pokeball base. And the whiteness of the water clashes with the Pokemon's outline, resulting in that white outline effect being more noticeable. It's not much better for Pokemon in the water, who are difficult to identify because of their small size and being completely covered by water. It just looks bad. There's also a lot of clipping in this game, whether it be Pokemon moving through trees, water, cliffs, or other Pokemon, as well as NPCs' hair into their bodies. And look at how laughable the texture work is on NPCs' clothing. Why does the text look this blurry? It's hard to overlook such bad design. Another major issue, and stop me if you've heard this about a Pokemon game before, is the animation work. Most Pokemon are once again confined to a small area, unable to walk out of it or do anything interesting within it, such as eating or battling one another. The worlds do feel more alive than in the wild area because of the scope, but these Pokemon once again feel borderline animatronic. I want to see them do more in the environment besides just exist. Within cutscenes and battles, the animations aren't refined or improved either. Once again, Pokemon practically just stand there, and when they're supposed to do something, the screen fades to black instead of actually showing what's going to occur. Here's evidence of this, when Braviary is supposed to fly away with this warden, but instead the screen fades to black, a few sound effects are played, and she's gone. The game cuts so many corners like this, it's ridiculous. The facial animation in this game is also laughably bad, as all we can muster are simple smiles, frowns, determined looks, and worst of all, these shocked faces. These moments of surprise happen a lot throughout the game, and it looks terrible every time. I laugh every time I see it. The game looks genuinely unfinished when issues like this occur so often. If this game had more time in development, a lot of these issues could have been cleaned up. But they weren't allotted that time, and it results in an ugly Pokemon game that seems on the verge of collapsing in on itself at any given moment. Now, as a disclaimer, it isn't completely hideous at all times, as there are some moments of beauty, especially when you're playing in handheld mode, but they are interrupted far too often by pop-in. Another element of the presentation that felt truly lacking from this game was voice acting. I know the series has never gone down this route, but now that these games appear on home consoles, I think it's time to make the change. The game feels empty enough as it is, and this vast void is only further felt when an NPC goes to speak and no sound comes out. So much could have been gained simply by having voiced lines, at least for the NPCs. Even bad writing is made a little bit better with good voiceover. It would help breathe more personality into each of these characters instead of relying on the writing to shoulder the full load. It's time, Gamefreak. Give us some voice acting in your next endeavor. Okay, I know, I get it. I don't want to be all negative in this section, but I can't understate how often issues pop up with this game's presentation that shouldn't be here in a AAA game, let alone one from a franchise of the caliber that Pokemon belongs to. I mean, the music's good. At least that's something, right? There's other small details that will make you grin, like shy Pokemon running away, or ancestor characters to those we know from other games, or Pokemon leaping out of berry trees, discovering the 3 major lakes of Sinnoh, and weirdly enough, seeing Gyarados flying in the air. But they're all just that, small, temporary moments. More needed to go into the visuals and performance to provide a solid basis, so that those details could shine, because then we'd be smiling all the time instead of wondering why Laventon's galaxy emblem looks pixelated. The corner cutting and lack of polish needs to stop. It's time for Pokemon games to be great, in part because of the presentation, not in spite of it. If this requires giving the development team more time, resources, or staff members, then it should be granted. Legends Arceus shakes up the gameplay for the better, and now it's time for the next game to do the same with the presentation, style, atmosphere, and animations. This game is fun, and that's what's most important. But man, a little added style would go a long way in making this game closer to masterpiece status. Things aren't going to get much better as we transition into the narrative section of this review, even though Legends Arceus makes a more pronounced attempt at storytelling. The game starts with your character falling into a portal through time and space, back to the days of the now ancient Hisui region. You quickly meet up with a professor named Laventon who teaches you the basic mechanics of catching Pokemon before escorting you to Jubilife Village, where you meet more companions, including a friend named Akari, the leader of the Survey Corps Silene, and the commander of the camp, Kamado. They start out weary of your presence since you quite literally fell out of the sky, but your natural skill at catching Pokemon proves to be very useful. This civilization is looking to better understand the creatures surrounding the camp, and your role is helping to complete the Pokédex, an organizational notebook that captures information on every Pokemon. As I mentioned before, this will take you to every part of the land, but besides categorizing Pokemon, you'll also be in charge of quelling the 5 noble lords of the Hisui region. A majority of the game follows this questline as you meet a handful of new NPCs in each region while unlocking ride Pokemon and taming the frenzied beasts. After this wraps up, a sudden twist will see your character being forced out on their own to uncover the mystery surrounding the portal that brought you to this ancient land. I won't go into spoiler territory, but this twist is really the only notable component of the entire story, as once again, Gamefreak is set on having pretty much everything be happy-go-lucky with very few moments of conflict. For example, we're told many times that the frenzied nobles can cause great damage, but we're never shown it, which makes for weak storytelling. This tell, don't show approach has marred Pokemon games for far too long, and Legends Arceus is another example of that. In the end, you solve the mystery and put an end to any life-threatening shenanigans as things return to the status quo. The storytelling is weak because neither the plot nor the characters are written well enough to capture any intrigue from the player. The characters are all one-dimensional with no sense of conflict and very little that motivates them. Akari is a bland companion. Laventon is a somewhat self-conscious professor who wants to learn more about Pokemon. Kamado is a headstrong leader, and Silene has a serious demeanor. Every character in the game can be summed up in full with these short assessments, resulting in a game full of people whose names you will not remember within a few days of finishing up the story. Perhaps the only exceptions to this are Irida and Adaman, the respective leaders of the Pearl and Diamond clans. These warring chieftains have very different worldviews, but come to respect and understand each other more as the game progresses. Really, the only impactful story choice in the game revolves around these two, which makes for an interesting touch. Now, that's not to say these are some of the best characters in any video game, far from it, but they at least stand out amongst the rest. This is especially true when compared to the game's wardens. These Diamond and Pearl clan members are also one-dimensional, but they have a lot less screen time, making them more forgettable than even the biggest pushover of a gym leader. They're meant to play an important role in this world, as they are caretakers of the ride Pokemon as well as the nobles, but they simply aren't developed enough to leave their mark on the player. Most of them are related to characters from other games in the series and are supposed to be like mini cameos, but it's not that great. And again, the lack of voice acting doesn't help in bringing them to life either. I would really like to see a Pokemon game provide more insightful and well thought out characters, although I'm not sure this is the title that needed to do that. While I'm not particularly high on the story of Legends Arceus, the emphasis on exploration would be disserviced by long cutscenes that ate up a lot of the player's game time. Still, Pokemon has such a well-realized world that the potential for storytelling is off the charts. I'd love to see a new sort of story in a Pokemon game, one where stakes matter. Overall though, the story of this game is kind of an afterthought. It's fine for what it is, but it's mostly there to provide a little structure to the gameplay. The narrative allows for a drip feed of content to pace the adventure, but little more than that. Of course, once the credits roll, there's still much to be accomplished in Hisui. There's a total of 8 main missions to complete once you wrap up the main story, but most of these center on capturing legendaries, collecting plates, and coming face to face with Arceus. Doing so will add a couple more hours of runtime to your playthrough. However, if you want to get super invested into this game, you can. I've already alluded to how monumental the task of completing the Pokédex is, but it no doubt provides a large deluge of content for you to tackle. There's also all those pesky requests to finish up if you haven't yet. This includes finding all the wisps of purple fire around the region to unlock an encounter with Spiritomb. You can also head online to trade Pokemon with friends, but unfortunately, you won't be able to battle them this time around. There's also shiny hunting and EV training for those so inclined. And just like in my Shining Pearl video, I'm breezing through a lot of this, but make no mistake that completing all of this is sure to balloon your runtime up considerably. I'm certain most players won't complete all this content, but it is there for those who want to get lost in this experience. Pokemon Legends Arceus is ultimately a huge success for the franchise, because it delivered on its promise to provide a new sort of experience without abandoning what makes the series great. Perhaps it's a bit hyperbolic, but the core gameplay loop here is so satisfying, so captivating, and so fun that I'm willing to call this game a savior for the franchise. Years of stagnation have actually begun to fade from my mind after experiencing Legends Arceus, and I hope Gamefreak is able to take this momentum and build on it. And build on it they must, because this game is far from a masterpiece. A few questionable choices within the battle system and open world design, along with a below average presentation and mediocre story, prevents this game from truly earning legendary status. However, it certainly feels like a nice, refreshing step forward. I implore Gamefreak to not only make more games of this nature, but also to go bold and bring these ideas, concepts, features, and mechanics directly into the 9th generation of games. Of course, this is Gamefreak, the development studio that leaves good ideas to die, so I'm not optimistic. That being said, I never thought we'd get a game like Legends Arceus, and here we are. Regardless of all of that though, at least we have this title, if nothing else. If Legends Arceus released during a period with more downtime, I would have gotten lost in it for dozens of more hours. I strongly recommend checking it out, as this is easily my favorite Pokemon games to release since Sun and Moon. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always guys, have a nice day, and take care.